Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions: the mystery of the longevity of the Jōmon, Japan's prehistoric culture that existed for 14,000 years. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction, not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. The oldest civilization in the world is not Mesopotamia. It is not Egypt. It is not the Indus Valley. It is a culture that flourished on the Japanese archipelago for approximately 14,000 years, longer than any other culture in human history, and left behind pottery that is 16,000 years old, making it the earliest fired ceramic in the world. The Jōmon people inhabited Japan from approximately 14,500 BCE to 300 BCE. And during that vast span of time, they developed a complex hunter-gatherer society with sophisticated ceramics, permanent settlements, ritual practices, trade networks, and a cosmological worldview that is ancestral to elements of later Japanese culture. They did all of this without agriculture, without writing, and without the state apparatus that conventional definitions of civilization require, which is why the Jōmon remain almost unknown outside Japan, despite having the longest continuous cultural tradition in the archaeological record. Jōmon are named for their distinctive pottery, which is decorated with cord impressions. Jōmon means cord pattern in Japanese. This pottery, first dated in the 1990 using improved radiocarbon techniques, was found to be approximately 16,000 years old, 2,000 to 3,000 years older than pottery from the Middle East, which was previously considered the world's earliest fired ceramic. The significance of this is more than chronological. It means that pottery technology was not invented by agricultural societies, as had been assumed, but by hunter-gatherers who had the time and surplus to experiment with fired clay. The Jōmon were apparently a prosperous, stable society with enough food security to invest labor in art and craft without needing farming to support their numbers. What ultimately ended the Jōmon? Around 300 BCE, new people arrived in Japan from the Korean peninsula, bringing rice agriculture, bronze and iron metallurgy, and a different way of life. These were the Yayoi people, and they gradually displaced and absorbed the Jōmon over the following centuries. The Jōmon did not disappear completely. Modern Japanese people carry Jōmon DNA, and the indigenous Ainu people of Hokkaido are their most direct descendants. But the 14,000-year culture was ended, not by catastrophe or collapse, but by the slow absorption of a different way of life. The longest-running human culture in history came to an end, and most people have never heard of it. This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we go further, if you are finding this investigation compelling, please take a moment right now to like this video, drop a comment below with your thoughts, and share it with someone who loves a good historical mystery. If you are watching on YouTube, hit subscribe and tap the bell icon so you never miss a new episode. If you found us through Facebook, tap follow on our page. It takes just a few seconds, and it genuinely helps us keep making these documentaries. Now, let us get back to the investigation. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the broader phenomenon of lost civilizations, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. For as long as human beings have told stories, they have told stories about what was lost. Every great culture on Earth carries myths of a golden age, a time before the current order, when civilization stood taller, knew more, and reached further than anything that came after. For centuries, scholars categorized these stories as allegory, comforting fictions invented by cultures to explain the gap between their aspirations and their achievements. But a quiet revolution in archaeology, geology, and oceanography has changed that calculus. The evidence now accumulating from seafloors, ice cores, and ancient texts is demanding a fundamental revision of the human story, one in which the line between myth and memory is far thinner than we imagined. The conventional timeline of civilization holds that complex urban society first emerged in Mesopotamia around 3500 BC. Before that, scattered farming villages, nomadic hunter-gatherers, and nothing more. But this tidy narrative has been challenged repeatedly by anomalous discoveries that do not fit the accepted sequence. Megalithic structures dated to 10,000 BC or earlier. Astronomical alignments encoded in monuments by cultures supposedly too primitive to understand the sky. Mathematical ratios embedded in architecture that would not be formally derived for thousands of years. These discoveries are not fringe fabrications. They are measured, published, and debated in peer-reviewed literature. They point toward a past far more complex than the textbooks describe. What happens when a civilization falls? Most of its knowledge disappears. The libraries burn, the engineers die, the farmers abandon the fields. Within a generation or two, the grandchildren of architects are living in the ruins of buildings they cannot build. We know this happened in the Bronze Age collapse of 1200 BC, when a networked civilization spanning the Mediterranean was destroyed in a matter of decades. We know it from the fall of Rome. History is not a steady march of progress. It is punctuated by catastrophic resets, after which humanity must begin again. The question is whether some of those resets happened far earlier than we know, and whether their traces are still waiting to be found beneath our feet. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades, and patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter. The core evidence surrounding the longevity of the Jōmon, Japan's prehistoric culture that existed for 14,000 years, is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. The Jōmon cultural period spans approximately 14,500 BCE to 300 BCE in Japan, making it the longest-running archaeological culture in the world by a significant margin. For comparison, ancient Egyptian civilization lasted approximately 3,000 years, and the Roman Empire approximately 1,000. The Jōmon period is typically divided into 6 phases. Incipient, 14,500-7,500 BCE. Initial 7,500-5,000 BCE. Early 5,000-3,500 BCE. Middle 3,500-2,500 BCE. Late 2,500-1,200 BCE. And final 1,200-300 BCE. Population estimates for the Jōmon peak, middle period, approximately 3,500-2,500 BCE, range from 100,000 to 260,000 people distributed across the Japanese archipelago. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen. Instruments malfunction. Researchers make mistakes. But as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered The Jōmon pottery tradition, dated to approximately 16000 BCE at sites, including Oda Yamamoto-I in Aomori Prefecture, predates the earliest agricultural pottery in the Middle East by 2000-3000 years. This has significant implications for the relationship between pottery and agriculture. The conventional narrative that pottery was invented to store agricultural surplus is falsified by the Jōmon evidence. Early Jōmon pottery appears to have been used for cooking fish and marine mammals. The chemical residue analysis of early Jōmon vessels shows lipids from fish and marine mammals, suggesting the technology was developed to process aquatic food resources in the productive coastal and riverine environments of early post-glacial Japan. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine. Jōmon settlements included both seasonal camps and permanent or semi-permanent villages. The most extensively studied permanent settlement, Sanai Maruyama in Aomori Prefecture, was occupied continuously from approximately 3500 to 2000 BCE and may have housed a population of several hundred people. The site contains evidence of large pit dwellings, storage facilities, a large ceremonial structure with 6 post holes arranged in a 2x2, 1-meter rectangular pattern, and extensive refuse deposits, shell middens, that preserve detailed evidence of diet, material culture, and trade. Connections. Long-distance trade is evidenced by obsidian from Kyushu, southern Japan, amber from Iwate Prefecture, and jade from Niigata, all found at Sanai Maruyama, which is in Aomori in northern Honshu. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation. But the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, Jōmon ritual life is evidenced by a variety of distinctive artifact types, including dagu, clay figurines, stone circles, and intentional burial practices. The dagu, which appeared during the Middle Jōmon period and become increasingly elaborate through the late Jōmon, depict stylized human figures with exaggerated female characteristics, large breasts, wide hips, and heart-shaped or goggle-eyed faces. More than 10,000 dagu have been recovered from Jōmon sites, and their breakage patterns, most are found deliberately broken, suggest they were used in rituals that involved intentional destruction, possibly as a form of healing magic in which the break in the figure corresponded to a break or cure in the body of the user. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of ancient DNA analysis of Jōmon individuals, published in a landmark 2021 Nature study by researchers from the Okinawa Institute of Science and Technology and collaborating institutions, revealed that the Jōmon people represent one of the earliest branching lineages of modern humans in Asia, diverging from other East Asian populations approximately 38,000 years ago. The Jōmon genome is distinct from all living mainland Asian populations and is most similar to the modern Ainu of Hokkaido, who show approximately 70% Jōmon ancestry, and the Ryukyuans of the Okinawa island chain, approximately 30% Jōmon ancestry. Mainland Japanese show approximately 10-15% Jōmon ancestry, the remainder being derived from later agricultural migrations from the Asian continent. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding: the Jōmon diet was extraordinarily diverse, reflecting the productivity of Japan's coastal and inland environments during the Holocene climatic optimum, approximately 9,000-5000 BCE, when sea levels were higher and coastal environments were particularly productive. Shell midden analysis at multiple sites has identified more than 60 species of shellfish, numerous fish species including tuna and bonito, requiring deep-sea fishing capability, deer, boar, bear, and various plant foods including acorns, chestnuts, and later period cultivation of barnyard millet and bottle goods. The diversity and abundance of the Jōmon diet is thought to have enabled the society's long-term stability without requiring the transition to full agriculture. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations. And in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain the longevity of the Jōmon, Japan's prehistoric culture that existed for 14,000 years. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that the complex hunter-gatherer theory is the mainstream interpretation. The Jōmon represent a complex or affluent hunter-gatherer society, one in which high resource productivity, particularly from the sea and rivers, enabled a sedentary or semi-sedentary lifestyle, population growth, craft specialization, long-distance trade, and ritual elaboration, without requiring the adoption of agriculture. This model places the Jōmon alongside other complex hunter-gatherers such as the Pacific Northwest Coast peoples and the Natufians of the Levant, challenging the conventional assumption that complexity and sedentism require agriculture. The Jōmon are the most extensively documented and longest-running example of this pattern in the world. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence. But it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that the proto-agricultural transition theory argues that late Jōmon society was in the process of transitioning toward agriculture when the Yayoi immigrants arrived with fully developed rice farming, effectively short-circuiting the Jōmon's own developmental trajectory. Evidence includes late Jōmon cultivation of several plant species, barnyard millet, bottle gourd, perilla, and the keeping of domesticated dogs. Under this model, the Jōmon were independently inventing agriculture when they were replaced, an alternative path to farming that was extinguished by historical contingency rather than cultural inferiority. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that the maritime trade network theory proposes that the Jōmon's long-distance trade connections, evidenced by materials moving hundreds of kilometers across the archipelago, indicate a level of social organization and maritime capability that has been underestimated by conventional interpretations. Some researchers argue that the Jōmon were in contact not just within the Japanese archipelago, but with continental East Asia, and that some elements of later Japanese culture, including aesthetic traditions in ceramics and spatial organization of ritual sites, have Jōmon rather than Yayoi roots. This theory rehabilitates the Jōmon as cultural ancestors of Japan rather than a replaced substrate population. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding the longevity of the Jōmon, Japan's prehistoric culture that existed for 14,000 years, does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes the radiocarbon dates from Jōmon pottery sites provide the foundational chronological evidence for the culture's extraordinary antiquity. Dates from pottery at Oda Yamamoto were obtained by accelerator mass spectrometry, AMS dating of organic residues adhering to the interior of the ceramic fragments, providing a direct date on the use of the vessels rather than on associated charcoal, which could be older than the pottery. The AMS dates cluster around 16,000-15,000 years ago and have been replicated by multiple independent laboratories, making them among the most robustly established dates for early ceramics in the world. The dates predate all proposed agricultural origins by several thousand years. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented the ancient DNA from Jōmon individuals analyzed in the 2021 Nature study, provides genetic evidence for the Jōmon's position as an ancient, long-isolated population. The genome-wide data shows the Jōmon as a deep-branching lineage that separated from other East Asian ancestors approximately 38,000 years ago, consistent with the early arrival of their ancestors in the Japanese archipelago via the islands that connected Japan to the Asian mainland during glacial low sea levels. The high genetic diversity within the Jōmon population, as measured from multiple individuals, is consistent with a long period of demographic stability in the archipelago. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed the Sanai Maruyama site excavations, 1992 present, have produced the most detailed picture of a major Jōmon settlement. The discovery of the large post structure, whose posts are made of chestnut wood and are set at precisely equal intervals, demonstrates architectural planning at a scale inconsistent with a simple hunter-gatherer encampment. The presence of deliberate chestnut cultivation, chestnut trees appear to have been managed and possibly planted near the site, blurs the distinction between forager and farmer, and supports the complex hunter-gatherer model. The extensive trade evidence from obsidian, jade, and amber shows connections across the full length of Honshu. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding the longevity of the Jōmon, Japan's prehistoric culture that existed for 14,000 years. Now we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present life. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. The Jōmon culture has received increasing international attention since the publication of the 2021 DNA study, which provided the most definitive genetic characterization of the Jōmon people and their relationship to modern Japanese populations. Several Jōmon sites are UNESCO World Heritage Sites or candidates for inscription, and the Japanese government has invested significantly in public archaeology programs that make Jōmon findings accessible to general audiences. Sanai Maruyama is now a major public archaeological park in Aomori. The Jōmon's relevance to contemporary debates about the relationship between complexity and agriculture has made them a frequent reference point in archaeological theory. The demonstration that pottery, sedentism, craft specialization, and long-distance trade can all develop in a non-agricultural context challenges core assumptions in archaeological models of social evolution. Additionally, the growing global awareness of the Ainu people as the living cultural descendants of the Jōmon has connected the ancient culture to contemporary indigenous rights debates in Japan, where the Ainu were officially recognized as an indigenous people for the first time in 2019, after more than a century of assimilation pressure that had severely eroded their traditional culture and language. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of the longevity of the Jōmon, Japan's prehistoric culture that existed for 14,000 years. From the historical record, through the physical evidence, across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of Jōmon ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process. And the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please help us reach more people. If you are watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new documentary. If you are watching on Facebook, tap the follow button on our page to stay connected. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.